This program is dedicated to a controversial topic that evokes numerous theories, opinions, and speculations. Listeners are invited to draw conclusions based on the available information. In an American government morgue lies a dead alien. For more than 10 years, the passions surrounding this suspicious and infamous film about the autopsy of an alien have not subsided. Is it reality or a hoax? If the film is genuine, it could serve as compelling evidence that aliens have visited Earth. Many television companies around the world are involved in this multi-million-dollar deception. The people participating in this have been played. One of the participants responsible for the special effects in the film crafted the alien himself. However, when the camera pulled back for a panoramic shot, an identical alien was found in the corner on the floor, which allegedly moved. This is a truthful document of exceptional importance. If this is a forgery, then it is likely the most unusual collection of fakes ever assembled by a filmmaker. The story of the alien autopsy dates back nearly 60 years and begins at the Roswell airfield in New Mexico. The Air Force announced that a flying disc had been discovered, which was now in the Army's possession. Army officials reported that the object found last week had been examined in Roswell and sent to Wright Field for further investigation. Walter Haut, the public relations officer of the 509th Bomb Group, was summoned to headquarters and received copies of a press release stating that they had in their possession a flying disc. He was ordered to distribute the press release to 4 news outlets in the town. This release quickly circulated among radio stations and evening newspapers, igniting the curiosity of a nation where hundreds of sightings of flying discs had been reported in recent months. However, everything ended as quickly as it began. Within 4 hours, General Ramey, commander of the 8th Air Force, made a new statement. It was not a flying disc at all. Everyone believed it was a weather balloon. All of this was presented very cleverly. At first, it was said that, yes, they had captured a flying saucer, and then the general, possessing much greater awareness, stated that it was a new type of weather probe. Nevertheless, the residents of Roswell believed that it was something more than a weather probe. One of the witnesses, whose father was part of the reconnaissance team at the military airfield, recalls how his father, very excited, came home around 1 or 2 in the morning and wanted to show the family what he had brought from the airfield. He claimed it was a part of a flying saucer. All of it was laid out on the kitchen floor, and they looked at it carefully. The witness picked up an elongated rod to examine it more closely. Light reflected off the inner surface, and he noticed some writings or symbols that initially appeared to him as hieroglyphs. While working on a book about this incident, writer Kevin Randall discovered that more people had encountered the debris than anyone could have assumed. By his latest count, he had spoken to about 4 dozen people who had encountered various aspects of the crash. Most interestingly, the material, similar to foil, could be crumpled into a ball and it would unfurl by itself. Attempts to set it on fire were unsuccessful. The flame would not hold to it. They even tried to cut it with pocket knives, but they could not. Among the witnesses was also Frankie Rowe, who had heard from Ray that he had seen compelling living evidence. According to him, there were 2 bodies. They lay on the ground next to the ship, and one of them, which the witness referred to as the little man, was still alive. Through numerous interviews with the participants of the crash in Roswell, researcher Kevin Randall was able to reconstruct the sequence of events starting from the moment the bodies and the ship were discovered. Reliable testimonies from several eyewitnesses confirmed that the ship and the bodies were transported to Hangar 84 at the military airfield in Roswell, where they remained overnight before being taken away. According to witness testimonies, the bodies were placed in a large wooden crate that was located in the center of the hangar. All actions were carried out with remarkable care. Soon after, it was announced that they had a flying saucer and that they had already acquired it. However, it seemed that no one sought anything else. Later, all of this was transferred to Fort Ward. Senior military officials claimed that they were not mistaken, but were simply observing a weather balloon. The press could not locate Jesse Marcel, as he was at Fort Ward and was forced to remain silent. When he returned from Carswell after inspecting the debris, he told his friend and his mother not to speak about it. Years later, Marcel confessed that he was part of a conspiracy of silence. supporting the explanations of the Air Force, even though he knew it was not true. Witness Frankie Rowe recounted that an officer came to her to inquire about a strange piece of metal that she had picked up. She confirmed that she had touched it, but the officer insisted that it had never existed. He became aggressive, stating that she had never been there and had seen nothing. He added that if she did not want to understand this, they could take action. The evidence supporting the legend of the UFO crash in 1947 remained unclear until 1995, when a film emerged in England showing an alien autopsy. This autopsy had always been met with ridicule. Who could believe that they were actually performing an autopsy on an alien? Ray Santilli, the owner of a music and video distribution company in London, recounted that in the early 1990s, after acquiring several films about rock and roll from the 50s, an American cameraman offered him something else. Santilli described how they watched this incredible film fragment, and his first reaction was disbelief. He explained that he eventually bought the reels of black and white film, which showed the autopsy of a strange humanoid creature. The cameraman, claiming to have top military clearance, told Santilli that in 1947, he had been urgently flown to Roswell, where he filmed several beings, both alive and dead, as well as the autopsy of one of them. He set aside boxes of film that required special handling and sent the remaining ones back to Washington. When he finally processed the set-aside boxes, he decided to turn to the main material. However, when he tried to sort through the reels in Washington, he was unsuccessful. He had stored them in a cardboard box in his archive. The question of forgery brings us back to the incident. The cameraman claimed to have seen a flying disc that had crashed, and a creature that was referred to as a freak. They lay on the flying craft, and most of them were screaming in pain. However, he could not say where they had come from, and he did not know. When the researcher visited his home, he noticed numerous memorabilia, such as photographs on the walls, photo albums, a diary, and documents. The cameraman seemed to him to be a sincere person. But then the question arises, why does Santilli not reveal the identity of this cameraman? First of all, the cameraman and his colleague agreed to keep secret how they obtained the film. If he gains confidence that he will not be persecuted, he may reveal his identity. However, according to the operator, he is already nearing 80 and he wants a quiet life. Moreover, he received money for personal needs, which raises questions about tax payments. Among experts, there is confidence in the authenticity of the film. This is not a question about Hitler's diaries or something similar. All they did was distribute the film to the public, urging people to study it. In this film, viewers can see the autopsy of a being referred to as an alien from other worlds. Even being silent, this 17-minute film is as dramatic as any Hollywood science fiction thriller, and perhaps it is not merely a fantasy of the filmmaker. It appears to be reality. A strange body appears on the screen, untouched except for an ugly wound on the right thigh. Two mysterious doctors in special protective suits examine its peculiar features, while a third observes from behind a glass partition. The question arises, is this really a strictly classified military autopsy of an alien in 1947? As in any investigation, it is necessary to listen to witnesses, consider the evidence, and present it to experts. One of the witnesses recalls that his father said the beings resembled small children. They had heads that were too large in comparison to their bodies, and their skin had a pinkish, grayish hue. Although the exact skin color cannot be determined, this description seems fitting. A nurse who allegedly attended the autopsy described a being similar to the one being dissected, with a large head and black eyes. However, according to the witness, she spoke more about 4 fingers than about 6, which creates some inconsistency. Frankie Rowe shares memories of how her father discovered 3 still living beings at the crash site. He said there was no need to be afraid, as they did not come to harm people. He genuinely felt bad that no one could help them. She feels sorry for these beings, whoever they may be. If they are indeed from another world, their family will never know what happened to them, and they will never return home. Nevertheless, eyewitness testimonies are generally unreliable, especially if they were made nearly 60 years ago. What else needs to be verified to determine whether this is a historical document or a clever forgery? Researchers carefully examined several items in the room to determine whether they existed in 1947. The wall clock, a standard electric model, was undoubtedly manufactured in the 40s of the 20th century. The siphon with a heavy tube and twisted cord also turned out to be a standard model released in 1937. Although all these items could have been purchased later, their presence corresponds to that time, which draws attention to the film. Could the film be dated? Ray Santelli sent it to Larry Gate, who had worked for 16 years in the production department of Kodak. To distinguish the age of the film, Eastman Kodak applies a date mark to it using a geometric code. The symbols on the edge, squares and triangles, were used by Eastman Kodak in Rochester, New York to denote the years of production: 1927, 1947, or 1967. This means that the film could belong to the 1947 release series. As for the way it was shot, a close look at the film can say a lot about its authenticity. There are many reasons to believe that this film was indeed shot in the late 40s to early 50s of the 20th century. Paolo Kirchei-Usi, senior curator of film at Broadchester, New York, notes that he is often asked if it is easy to counterfeit film. He replies that no, it is not that simple. Counterfeiting film would require significant technical skills. Otherwise, the efforts would be in vain. Alan Davio, one of the most decorated Hollywood cinematographers, expresses doubt. "I must say that I think what we have seen here is not true." He was the cinematographer for films such as Baxter, Empire of the Sun, and Kong. However, Davio does not trust the film, as it constantly goes out of focus, as if trying to hide something unreal. Listening to him, one can notice that the cinematographer does not show any intention to focus, which raises doubts about the quality of the shooting. The loss of focus aligns with the equipment that was used at that time. Roderick Ryan, an experienced combat cinematographer of the naval forces, knows how filming was conducted for armies in the 40s of the 20th century. He filmed the most secret government projects, including the atomic bomb tests at Bikini Atoll. At that time, the military primarily used cameras of the Filmo brand manufactured by Bell and Howell. These cameras did not have through-the-lens focusing, which complicated the shooting process. If the hoax were maintained, it could indicate the presence of modern equipment, which would have been impossible for 1947. Deviol also doubts the quality of the filming, noting that the operator is clearly unable to capture clearer shots. In particular, he points to one moment when the operator is sawing through a skull, but at the same time he is positioned in such a way that he cannot see what is happening. He does not attempt to maneuver around the doctor to get a better view, but merely tries not to interfere with the surgeon. The operator, dressed in the same gear as the surgeons, is limited in movement. He used a standard handheld camera of that time and did not have access to more modern equipment, which could explain the quality of the filming. The role of the operator in the Army was to document events, and he was not required to make perfect shots. Daviol believes that the operator's work is quite satisfactory for documenting events, although he does not believe that what he sees is real. Every fake he encountered almost immediately evoked a sense of forgery. He wonders, why would anyone invest such money and effort into creating such a film? It makes no sense. So what is it? A real autopsy of an alien, or is it a dummy? Perhaps it is an incredible hoax. To find out, the film was shown to two leading forensic pathologists in the world. Chris Milroy, a senior lecturer in forensic medicine at the University of Sheffield in England, is known for his expertise in determining causes of death and investigating murders. Cyril Wecht, a former president of the American Academy of Forensic Sciences, has conducted or supervised nearly 40,000 autopsies. Wecht, analyzing the footage, notes, "I have never dealt with anything even remotely resembling the creature we see in the film." He points out anomalies such as the low placement of the ears, which does not conform to norms for a human being. This strange creature, which some call an alien from outer space, fits the popular concept of what an extraterrestrial looks like. With a huge head and enlarged eyes, familiar from books and films about alien visitors. Additionally, it has 6 fingers on each hand and foot, a condition known as polydactyly, a phenomenon observed in various chromosomal or genetic anomalies. Wecht also notes the absence of male genitalia, indicating that this must be the body of a woman, but without any secondary sexual development. He suggests that this could be a woman with Turner syndrome, a chromosomal anomaly that affects 1 in 5,000 births. Its victims who lack female chromosomes do not develop sexually. Some of them reach the age of sexual maturity, but in 99% of individuals with such an anomaly, the abortion occurs spontaneously. In other words, they simply do not get born. This leads to the thought of the likelihood of a very rare manifestation of Turner syndrome in a teenager. Turner syndrome is a condition in which a child could survive and develop in childhood. However, Turner syndrome is not the only defect. There are also cases with 6 fingers on hands and feet, as well as enlarged eyes. Can such diverse anomalies manifest in the same person? The specialist expresses his viewpoint. I would not be surprised if I found someone with such types of anomalies. I would say it is a great rarity, but I would not be surprised if someone said it is described somewhere in the medical literature. The puzzle is not only the studied body, but also the researchers. Authoritative educators such as Vecht and Milroy have trained hundreds of doctors. They know how a proper autopsy is conducted, unlike how amateurs or actors do it. These pathologists, anatomists, or surgeons have performed numerous autopsies. A presumed footage from 1947 appears on the screen. The items are unchanged, and we see what is characteristic of that time. For example, a handsaw for removing the skull cap in a low rectangular tray, which, as the specialist recalls, was used many years ago. Today, such items are not used. The main presumed actions correspond to what happens during an autopsy, but questions arise. If this is indeed an alien, why is it allotted only 2 hours? An autopsy of an alien body, of course, should have taken weeks, months, if not years. If this is an alien, then it reportedly died when its spacecraft crashed on Earth. Both doctors who spent so much time investigating doubt the cause of death. In a major high-speed crash, more extensive bodily injuries are usually observed. Here, however, the wounds look strange. Only one of them is large, on the right thigh, and resembles an injury that could be sustained from a rocket incident or hazardous work related to experiments in the field of radiation or fuel. A specialist poses the question, and a successful radiation experiment? That could explain why the doctors are dressed in protective suits. Radiation could be the cause of the creature's death and its bizarre deformation. Let us recall that Roswell, where the body was allegedly found, was located not far from the site of American nuclear tests. Maybe this is some unfortunate woman who suffered damage to her ovaries or cervix and received a dose of radiation. We should not rule out such a possibility. However, this does not explain what particularly interests the specialist, the pre-pectoral. This cannot explain why the creature grew extra fingers on its hands and feet, or disproportionately large eye sockets. If the pathologist cannot explain what caused the unique deformation of the creature, perhaps they will unravel the mystery when they begin the autopsy. Then we will find out what is inside the body. The specialist continues. I cannot attribute these structures to the contents of the abdominal cavity. The liver, if that was the liver, should have been higher on the right. He sees a mass that he cannot associate with any human body he has seen before. This structure should be the brain if this is a human being, but it does not resemble the brain I have seen. Or is it a brain filled with neoplasms, irradiated, a traumatized brain, hemorrhagic? Outside the body, what is on the tray does not seem to resemble a human brain. It looks too colorless and shapeless. A witness who observed the autopsy shares his impressions. I must say, as difficult as it is for me to talk about this, what I see here cannot be a human being. I would prefer to say that at this moment it is a humanoid. I am not saying it is from another planet. From which planet? I do not know. He continues, but I cannot say that this is the human race, since you and I know what the human race is. 2 well-known pathologists believe that the film may be showing the autopsy of a real biological organism. However, there is another explanation. This creature is not made of flesh and blood, but is most likely man-made to fool those who see it. Doubts about the authenticity of the material are expressed by a special effects expert. How hard is it to make a freak that is constantly bleeding? He mentions Stan Winston, whose company created the most lifelike Hollywood creatures. He created dinosaurs for Jurassic Park and quite convincing alien predators, extraterrestrials. Winston would have been pleased if he had managed to reproduce humanoids like this. The witness recalls his first reaction. This is unreal. This body was made by someone, like a prop. He continues, knowing how difficult it is for us in the world of live effects to imitate skin cutting, I looked at this and told myself, if this is unreal, then I would truly be proud to have created an image like this today. Discussing the details, he notes, the quality of the organic material, the legs and the seams looks very good. Look how evenly the blood is on the inner surface, how much has dripped down, where inside everything is evenly wet. But I think we will never be able to create something like this. He adds, this is freaking incredible, if that is my opinion. If we had done this, I would be proud of it. The difficulties in reproducing the details of the autopsy become evident. How to do this, an uneven flap. And how to do this on the skull, to cast the skull inside the skin. And what about the humidity? It doesn't look like there is a void there. And what about bleeding? Humidity? It's not visible that anything is flowing from the tubes, there is no visible dripping blood, it's still evenly wet. He questions the materials. What materials exist that would copy skin like this? And he answers himself. Mostly specially designed silicones that we use today. That's exactly what I said. In 1947, they didn't have that. He emphasizes, now having access to these technologies, one can make great monsters for Hollywood movies. Discussing the cost, he remarks, if something like this were made today, it would cost many, many thousands of dollars. Even if it wasn't made during that period, just to do it properly would be very expensive. He expresses admiration for the creators. I take my hat off to the people who created this. American television producer Robert Kiviad, who released the hit 1995 film Alien Autopsy Fact or Fiction, began searching for evidence of fraud, studying another darkened film related to the movie, which allegedly shows an alien autopsy conducted in a tent near the site of a UFO crash in Roswell in 1947. Kiviad questions Ray Santilli. Why do these two scenes not match at all? What did the military operator tell you about these two scenes? Santilli replies, the operator claims that on the dark film, President Harry Truman's scientific team sent to Roswell received an alien, examined it, and then transferred it to another location. It is possible that viewers are going to be shown an alien lying on a table with a flashing flashlight in the background. In the recording made during the alleged autopsy of the extraterrestrial being, the faces of the doctors engaged in this mysterious procedure can be distinguished. A grim man appears on the film, periodically blocking the camera with his cloak. However, the researcher had serious doubts about the authenticity of this recording. He believed that the film from the tent looked like a staging, and the static camera would not correspond to how a team of scientists would act. The doubts intensified when he noticed that two doctors in the film appeared to him to be British, although he could not explain why exactly that was the case. Intrigued by this material, the researcher quickly concluded that all of this could be part of a grand deception. He noted that there were two completely different films containing the scene of the alien autopsy, which raised even more questions. Subsequently, the researcher learned about a third film that Ray showed him. This film, black and white, depicted a military man in uniform who was spinning a metal beam with hieroglyphs, presumably of the aliens. The camera then focuses on a table cluttered with metal parts, among which were strange imprints resembling six-fingered hands. Ray claimed that these were the control panels of the aliens, possibly from their ship. The researcher continued to study the films that Ray Santilli presented as authentic footage of aliens. In 1998, his suspicions regarding the authenticity of the doctors in the tent and growing doubts about Santilli's claims led to the creation of a television program titled The Greatest Hoaxes. Mysteries finally revealed. He understood that the film from the tent was merely part of a more complex scheme. The researcher sent the film to NASA, where specialists created still images of the doctors leaning over the alien. Upon magnification, the faces became clearly distinguishable. Using technologies applied to create portraits of criminals, they were able to obtain clear images that could assist in identifying these individuals. During the investigation for the greatest hoaxes in England, the researcher met with Kate Goodyear, who informed that she knew a man from the tent named Elliot, working at AK Music. Later, Elliot confirmed that he was willing to come to America for an exclusive interview. He recounted that Ray Santilli approached AK Music with a request to create a film depicting the scene of the autopsy several months before the Alien Autopsy film was released in 1995. Elliot explained that Santilli wanted the footage to appear as though the alien autopsy was taking place in a tent set up immediately after the UFO crash in Roswell in 1947. Elliot also noted that while the attempt at the autopsy, dubbed the tent footage, was interesting, Ray decided that it was not enough to attract attention. He asked the team to make the filming more vivid and spectacular, to create the impression of a real alien autopsy, as if doctors were holding some tissues. However, AK Music responded that they could not fulfill such a request. Nevertheless, Ray Santilli found a talented team of special effects specialists, but Elliot did not know exactly where he sought help. British UFO researcher Philip Mantle, who had been trying to unravel this story for more than 10 years, discovered an important lead in 2002. I wrote an article. It was titled "The Alien Cover-Up, a New Version." This article was published in UFO magazine here in England. It was an update in which I discussed the main aspect of my research into this film. At the end of the article, my contact information was provided. If you have any information about this film, please contact me. Soon, I received an email from a man who introduced himself as Simon. He was very concise. He knew something about the film. He said that his friend created that creature. I am not talking about the tent footage. I mean the brightly lit scene of the autopsy. He made a puppet for that scene, and he created smoke for it. In fact, he was not a special effects artist. He was a sculptor whose works were sometimes used in film and television. Philip Mantle reported his discovery to Robert Kiviat in Hollywood. A few days later, I contacted the manager of the person who, according to Simon, was fully responsible for the autopsy film, including the models and mock-ups for Ray Santilli. The manager and I had a long conversation. The man who, according to Simon, created the creature for the alien autopsy apparently wanted to tell his story. He wanted to sell it. He wanted me to know what Ray Santilli had promised. In 7 years, he or someone else would publish it. Thus, this man was eager to share his story with the public. And I was more than happy to provide him with such an opportunity on television. But Kivet was unable to find buyers in Hollywood. It seems that the fraudster from the world of special effects did not find himself in the spotlight. Many, at least in America, perceived the greatest hoaxes as proof that the alien autopsy was a scam. But I explained to the executives of television companies in Hollywood that if you look online, ask ufologists and ordinary people, especially outside of America, they do not consider the alien autopsy to be a proven fake yet. However, there were also very unpleasant circumstances. I could not convince the television companies that the greatest hoaxes do not concern the brightly lit stage. The manager of that special effects master began to lose interest in me, as I could not settle the matter. In 2005, when reports emerged that a feature film titled Alien Autopsy was planned, Philip Mantle received information about the identity of the creator of that scene. And strangely enough, this news was revealed by a woman from the film company. It was a British company called Qwerty Films. I asked the lady from this company who was responsible for the special effects, who was hired to create the special effects for their film about the autopsy. She directly informed me via email that the person responsible for the special effects was named John Humphrey. Moreover, he was not only responsible for the alien effects, but also created the original alien. All right, you got me. Here is who this guy is. All you need to do, if you know his name, if you are a good journalist like Philip Mantle, is to visit John Humphrey's website. And you will find out that John Humphrey is indeed the one who, as you might think, fooled 2 pathologists and deceived American expert Stan Winston. The fact is that John Humphrey is a sculptor who knows how to use animal parts, real animal innards, placing them in a beautifully crafted shell. He is an expert, he is smart, he is an artist. and that is one of the reasons why I did not want to reveal his name until Philip Mantle found out who he was. Because I respect art, I respect people who are capable of handling such a task, but on the other hand, it was a deception worth millions of dollars, involving many television companies around the world. Many people were deceived. Millions of viewers. At least 100 million people worldwide watched this film and were convinced that it was true. In April 2006, with the release in the United Kingdom of the feature film Alien Autopsy, there was an unexpected confession from John Humphrey. He stated that he not only created the alien for Ray Santilli's film, but also played the surgeon who made the incision. Despite this, Santilli continued to insist that he had acquired a genuine American military film made in 2006. Santilli claimed in an interview with the English newspaper Sunday Times that Humphrey merely reproduced the authentic footage of the incident in Roswell, which had been severely damaged when it was retrieved after 10 years of storage. Despite Humphrey's confirmation that it was a carefully orchestrated hoax, Santilli insisted that Humphrey obtained very accurate images for his work. However, before the revelation of the footage of the so-called genuine autopsy, Santilli's latest statement seemed no more credible than any part of his constantly changing story. Even after the apparent exposure of the alien autopsy mystery, millions of people continued to believe in the existence of UFOs and that the American government was hiding something. Washington still denies this, maintaining the same position it held nearly 60 years ago during the Roswell incident. Ufologists like Stanton Friedman and others claim that the U.S. government is concealing the complete dossier on UFOs and evidence of the UFO crash in Roswell. Questions about the analysis materials, autopsy reports, and witness testimonies from those present at the events and who investigated this in various government laboratories remain unanswered. There is no doubt that a film about the autopsy exists. When such an event occurs, all its aspects are filmed. People who collected debris both in the field and at the crash site claimed that photographs were taken and a film was shot. All of this must be somewhere. The existence of the Alien Autopsy film released in 1995 titled Alien Autopsy, Fact or Fiction, possibly indicates the presence of another authentic film about aliens. Dr. Michael Maloney, a fellow of the Royal Photographic Society, recalls an astonishing event he witnessed many years ago when, as a photojournalist, he visited the Walt Disney Studio. He confirms that he filmed a real alien. On the 28th of March 1978, I was invited to lunch with the executives of the Disney company. A car came to pick me up and took me to a house in Los Angeles. I sat in the living room. It was an ordinary house. They turned on a projector and started showing a film that I now know as Alien Autopsy. At that time, I did not know that. I was mesmerized, he recalls. According to him, he found himself among people in white coats, in a clinical setting with a long table resembling an old-fashioned operating room. He remembers an old-fashioned telephone with a spiral cord on the wall. The camera moved in a circle, and this was filmed by a professional. It was definitely not home video. It circled the operating table where specialists, doctors, and surgeons were conducting a post-mortem autopsy of a being resembling an alien. When the camera pulled back for a panoramic shot on the floor in the corner, there was an identical alien, or something resembling an alien, and it was moving. I assumed that the one on the table was dead, but the one on the floor was moving. I thought, this is incredible. He shares his impressions. After watching the film, he was asked what he thought about it. He replied, "Fantastic. I have never seen anything like this in my life." Now the question arises, is it possible that the film he saw in 1978 has some relation to the fake Alien Autopsy film created in 1995? And was Ray Santilli's film inspired by real events? When he watched it for the first time, he noticed that it was very similar to the room he had seen in March 1978. Memories of what happened in Roswell remain vivid in the minds of many. One of the researchers, sharing his thoughts, noted that although he recognized the place and the people, much of the original footage he had seen was missing. He emphasized that there was no alien in the frame, and the small details that were visible in the original 16mm film were absent. Nevertheless, he was sure of one thing: the original film he saw was astonishing and real. However, the situation changed when Ray Santilli presented physical evidence, claiming that he had an authentic military film of an alien autopsy. This statement could have inspired documentary filmmakers like John Humphrey. Until such evidence is presented to the general public, supporters of the theory regarding the Roswell incident continue to await more convincing documentary proof.